Good morning. Welcome back to Planet Doug Behind the Scenes for Friday, April 5th, 2024. It's about 20 after 7 in the morning. This is instant cup of coffee number 2. And I'm back in Planet Doug Studios inside my hotel room at the J Hostel Masjid. And just the way this room is arranged, it's a little bit awkward. Also because I don't have my Olympus camera anymore. My Olympus camera is still at the repair center, the Olympus Service Center here. And I haven't heard back from them yet, so I don't know if the camera can be fixed, and I don't know how much it might cost to fix it. So this is being shot on my GoPro, and that makes for an interesting experience because I did this one other time. And as I explained then, in order to do this with the GoPro, I have to put my little tripod on the bed. So it's a little bit of a precarious situation. But yeah, we'll see how this goes. If you see a lot of rocking motion on the GoPro, as I move a little bit here, it's because the tripod is sitting on the mattress. I don't have a table. I don't have any kind of I don't have another way of mounting the camera. I just have it sitting right on the mattress, so that's kind of funny. And this is the very first time I'm wearing my new Puma Shirt on a video. Yeah, this Puma Shirt was given to me by a Planet Doug subscriber, someone who I'm calling my mystery assistant, and that will make sense in a minute as I tell one of my Planet Doug stories. But yeah, here's the shirt. As I said before, I was a little bit concerned that the shirt would be too small because it is an XL. I would normally go for double XL, XXXL, whatever you call those things. I like my clothing to be very big and loose and billowy, more like wearing a tent than a shirt. It may not look fashionable, but I do find it more comfortable. A shirt like this is probably the correct size for me. Everything fits my shoulders properly, things like that. But then shirts like this do tend to feel a little bit tight over time. But we'll see how this works out. It actually fit better than I expected. It fits nicely, and it seems to be comfortable. With any new clothing that has a slightly different feeling to it, a different fit, I think you just have to give it some time, and then you get used to it. Because even this shirt is a little bit, like it touches my neck, and I usually have shirts that have a more open. Whenever I feel a shirt pulling against my neck, I think it gives me a little bit of PTSD flashback to the days when you might have had to wear a collared shirt with a tie. And then anytime a collared shirt with a tie sucks up against my neck, it's like, I feel like I can't breathe. I feel constricted. And of course, this shirt is not like that at all, but it does have a smaller neck, and I can feel it against my neck. And that probably looks good. It's very fashionable, and I'll probably get used to it if I wear this shirt for a couple of days. After a couple of days, I won't even feel the tight fit across my body or around my neck. We'll see how that goes. But here it is, my new Puma shirt in video for the very first time. And I wasn't even going to record a behind-the-scenes video this morning. In fact, I was thinking about doing another behind-the-scenes video while I'm out in Kuala Lumpur running an errand. I want to visit a camera store, which is quite far away. And I thought, as I travel to the camera store, I can record a behind-the-scenes video on the MRT system as I'm walking. That's what I was planning to do. But I had an old BTS video that I'd almost forgotten about. I recorded it, and then I had the source files, the raw video files on my computer, and I sort of forgot it was there. But I remembered it suddenly, so I finished cleaning it up, and my laptop right now is exporting it. and it looks like it's going to take an hour and a half to finish exporting it. So while I wait for my laptop to finish working, I can talk to you and tell a few stories from the recent days. The thing is, I've been extremely busy since I've come back to Kuala Lumpur. I've had a lot of invitations from people to go out, to go do things. I had another big adventure yesterday, which I'll talk about in a minute. And I've had invitations from people to go out in the morning, meet them for breakfast, go here, explore there, do different things. So in the morning, lately, I've been waking up at the crack of dawn as I normally do, but then heading out into the world. And the early morning when I'm having my cup of coffee, that's when I normally record one of these videos. But so many of my mornings recently, I just haven't been here. I wake up and I go out to meet somebody, to go do something. So I've sort of fallen behind in my behind the scenes videos. But here I am. I'm back at it once more. A couple of life updates, I guess, just random things. I mentioned that I haven't heard back from Olympus about my camera, so I still don't know what's happening with that. But 2 mornings ago, I did get a couple of emails from Olympus, but they were giving me quotes for my lenses because I gave them a camera body to look at, the OMD EM5 Mark II. That's my main micro four thirds camera, and it just stopped working when I was down in Port Dickson. I don't know why. It just, nothing happened. I didn't drop it. I hadn't even been using it walking around, so it has only been used on a tripod for a long time inside air-conditioned hotel rooms. So there was no reason for it to fail, but just out of the blue, one morning shooting a behind-the-scenes video, it just stopped working, and I wasn't able to get it to work again. So I brought it into Olympus. But then while I've been here in Kuala Lumpur, I got a bag out of storage. I had a bag of extra gear in storage with a friend of mine, and then I picked it up one morning because inside that bag were 2 camera lenses. One of them is the Olympus 75mm f1.2, I think, a very expensive lens, an amazing lens, but it's more for portrait photography. So I haven't used it for a long time because I've been shooting video now. I don't take pictures anymore. When I do take pictures, I take them with my smartphone. So I'm not using my Olympus for photography anymore. And I had a very small, very lightweight 45mm Olympus lens. And that's also a portrait lens, basically. Really interesting lens, but I just don't use it anymore. So I had it in storage, and those 2 lenses were here in Kuala Lumpur in storage in a very hot and humid environment. I put them in storage at a hostel, thinking I would be gone only a short time, but that's when the pandemic hit. So it took me over 2 years to get back to Malaysia. And then by the time I did, and I got those lenses out of storage, they had suffered a little bit. They'd grown fungus, a little bit of fungus on the inside. So I wanted to get them refurbished, basically professionally refurbished by Olympus. So I brought those lenses to Olympus, and they were going to check them over for me and tell me how much it was going to cost to get them cleaned up and get them back into new condition. And once they're back in new condition, right now my plan is to sell them. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, 2 mornings ago, I got a quote, an email from Olympus. And this is leading into a bit of a Planet Doug pet peeve story. It's good news, I suppose, because the quote for each lens was 150 ringgit to open them up, clean out all the fungus, and then put them back together again. So each lens, 150 ringgit. And that's good news because other companies that I talked to, they were quoting me 300 ringgit at least to clean the lenses. So getting it done professionally by Olympus who would be the best people to do it actually is cheaper than bringing it to other camera service centers that I checked with. So seems like a good price for this kind of work. Plus, when I brought them in to be serviced, the Olympus technician, he talked to me and he said, well, one problem we might face once we open up your lenses and examine them, there might be fungus in an area that we can't clean. And if that's the case, we have to replace those camera elements. Because in a modern lens like the 75mm, it's not like one piece of glass. I don't know how many pieces of glass are in the 75mm, but it could have 15 different pieces of glass in there. They're very complex optical things, these modern lenses. And he said they might have to replace some of those lens elements. And if they have to do that, then it would be much, much, much more expensive. So when they send me the quote by email and it was 150 ringgit, that told me, oh, they don't have to replace any of the elements. They can actually clean the lens and reassemble it, and it'll be just like new condition again. So they don't have to replace anything. So that was the good news. But then we get into Planet Doug pet peeves, and this is always, well, one of my pet peeves is always about customer service, because I did get the email from Olympus that said, we've checked your lens, here's the quote, let us know what you want us to do, and then it said 150 ringgit. But that's all it said. No other information. And I'm thinking, if I were working at Olympus and I was in their customer service department, I would find that email unacceptable because it doesn't tell me anything. I would prefer to get an email that says, Dear Mr. Nienhuis, we've checked your lens carefully and we are able to clean the fungus from these lenses, and we do not have to replace any of the elements. So it's going to cost 150 ringgit, and it will take us approximately 5 business days to do the work. So let us know if you'd like us to do it or not. Sincerely, Olympus. So the email should tell me what they did, but it doesn't. It doesn't say a thing. It just says 150 ringgit, pay us please. And that's the whole email. And it should say what they did, what they found when they opened up the lens, when they examined it, what their conclusions were, and telling me, okay, this is what we found, this is what we can do, there's no need to replace any of the elements, so that's good news, and this is how much it's going to cost based on what we saw. But there was none of that information in the email, and it didn't tell me how long it was going to take. So they're asking me, do you want to pay us 150 ringgit or not? But then they didn't give me any of the information that I need to make a judgment call. So technically, right after you get that email, what you probably would end up doing is calling the company. Now you have to ask them all these questions. It's like, oh, you quoted me 150 ringgit, but does that include just cleaning the lens, or does that include replacing any of the elements? Then you get your answer. Oh, okay, I see, thank you, I understand. Oh, and how long is this going to take? How many days or weeks? You know, you have so many of these questions you want to ask them, but you shouldn't have to ask any questions. All the information should be in the email. And it's even worse because I gave them 2 lenses and I got 2 separate work orders. This is my paperwork from Olympus from when I dropped off the lens. And in the email about the quote, it didn't even tell me which lens they were talking about. There was no information about the lens. It just said, regarding work order, something, it's going to cost 150. What do you want us to do? So I'm looking at the quotation. I don't know which lens. Are they talking about the 75mm lens? Or are they talking about the 45mm lens? I don't know. So I have to look at the email, look at the order number, the work order number, and then I have to get out my paperwork and then compare the work order number to my original paperwork and say, okay, which one was it? And oh, okay, this is the work order here. But even the paperwork that they gave me, it doesn't say which lens it is. Like it doesn't say 75 millimeter f1.2 or 45 millimeter f1.8. It just has a model number. So this work order, for example, is for the ET M4518 SLV. And I'm thinking, well, thank you very much, but I don't know what that is. It's not like I go around life and I know the serial number for all of my lenses. So now I have to go from the email, which is the work order, compare that work order to the work order on my paper. Now I know, okay, this is the service order, but now I have to get this complex model number and serial number, and then I have to track down the model number and serial number on Google. I'm doing a search on Google so I can figure out, well, what lens is this? And then I find out, oh, this is the 75 millimeter. So I have to do so much work. So the email should say 75 millimeter lens. They should tell the customer what the heck they're talking about. So yeah, customer service at these big corporations is so poor. I find that all the time in my life. And so there it is, a Planet Doug pet peeve that, yeah, customer service is always lacking when it comes to dealing with these large companies. And I don't know why it's so terrible. There's no reason for it. Somebody should be able to look at it and see that this is inappropriate. I was telling this story to a Malaysian friend of mine, and he said, well, in Malaysia, what happens is as soon as you get a quote from a company, a Malaysian person will immediately get on the phone and start asking them questions. Okay, so you send me this, 150 ringgit. Can you give me a discount? Is that the final price? How long is this going to take? Oh, 2 weeks? What? You can't do it in 2 days? I want to pick it up tomorrow. Like, the Malaysian person is going to get on the phone and start asking them all kinds of questions and asking for a discount and pushing them to get the job done faster. And I just don't operate that way. If I tried to phone Olympus, I wouldn't be able to get through. I wouldn't know who to call. I wouldn't know how to make a phone number. And I would end up, if I managed to get through, I'd get the woman at the front desk who doesn't speak English very well. She knows nothing about cameras. She's not a technical person. She just runs the computer and the cash register, basically. So me calling the company is a big problem. I want all the information in the email. But hey, that is just me here on Planet Doug. Uh-oh, I think I have a problem with my video exporting over there on my laptop. It seems to have frozen. I think the export failed for some mysterious technical reason, so I better go check on this and restart it. I'm back. Yeah, the export of that other behind-the-scenes video just failed. And there was a big error message on the screen, but of course, as always happens with these complex computer programs like DaVinci Resolve, or anything to do with computers, to be honest, it tells you there was an error, but it doesn't ever tell you where the error is. So how do you fix it? So in this case, it said something about fusion process in the current clip was unable to be exported or something like that. Fusion. I have no idea what it meant, and even if I knew what it meant, it tells me the current clip, because the video is divided up into 100 separate video clips, right? But it doesn't tell me, it says the current clip, so where it failed, I guess, is the current clip. As far as the computer is concerned, it got to this clip and then it failed, but I don't know when that happened. Like, you have to tell me which clip you failed. You can't tell me the current clip, because to me that makes no sense. I don't know which one is the current clip. I don't know when the error occurred. The computer knows when it occurred, but I don't know. It needs to tell me. So basically, I went over the entire video from beginning to end, kind of approximating how long the export had gone on. And I calculated that about a third of the video had been exported when it failed, based on how long it was taking. And then I calculated where 1/3 of the video was, and I went through there. And I have very simple graphics. I don't do anything fancy. I don't have complex animation or anything that should challenge the computer. There's nothing in this video that I have not done a million times in the past, or yeah, in this video, in this editing project. So there's no reason for it to fail. But I kind of looked over that area where I think the failure occurred, and I just deleted everything. I have little text boxes saying, just giving information, something I'm mentioning, and I want to show the spelling of the name or something, and I just put it in a little text box. I just deleted all of those text boxes, thinking it must have been one of those things that the computer didn't like for some reason, and I've just restarted the export. So starting all over again from the beginning. There's an hour and a half of my life I'll never get back again. And I do find that these mistakes, these errors, whether I make it or the computer makes it, have a weird psychological effect when you are a YouTuber, because it ends up being a huge amount of work. And then when you get faced with all of these problems you need to solve, and then you have to redo it and redo it and redo it, by the time you're done, it starts to feel out of proportion to the final product, because obviously this behind the scenes video is not that important. It's just me wandering around KL, babbling into a GoPro, talking about my life. Whether this behind the scenes video is on the internet, is on YouTube, whether it exists or doesn't exist, makes no difference to anyone on the planet, really. I could just delete the whole thing right now. Nobody would know about it. Nobody would care. It's not that important. So when you get all these error messages and you end up working really hard on one of these things and spending a huge amount of time on it, it starts to feel weird. It's like if I were Steven Spielberg and I was working on a movie that I thought was going to be a masterpiece, well, yeah, of course, I'm going to keep working on it to get it right. But if all you're doing is throwing up a random YouTube video on a behind-the-scenes channel, you really shouldn't have to work that hard to get it done. It should be just smooth sailing. If it's smooth sailing and it doesn't take a lot of time, then it makes sense. But if you run into error after error, problem, you have to redo it over and over, and it ends up taking the whole day, you start to feel ridiculous. Like, why am I working so hard on this stupid thing? But anyway, this one was not my fault. As far as I'm aware, I had nothing to do with this problem. It was all about DaVinci Resolve and my computer and however they're talking to each other. It glitched. So anyway, I tried to unglitch it. I restarted it, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. Funny thing is, when I was editing this video, I ran into another problem that was completely unexpected, because when I was just listening, I had all my raw video clips. I dumped them all into the timeline, and I watched the entire video from beginning to end, and I cut out all the dead air parts and remove everything that I don't need, add a little bit of text boxes, and I'm done. But then I got to a point where I was walking around KL, and it suddenly started to rain. There was a huge downpour, like one of those massive thunderstorms that KL gets from time to time. And I had to run from Berjaya Times Square across maybe 15 feet of open ground where the rain would be hitting me before I got to the covered monorail station. And I had an umbrella, so I got out my umbrella, I put it over my head, I held the GoPro really close to me to get it out of the rain, and then I ran across like 15 feet of open territory where the rain was falling. I tried to keep everything dry, But apparently I didn't. I think what happened is rain then fell from my umbrella or fell from my hair or something. But anyway, a raindrop or two got into my microphone and into my GoPro, and it ended up distorting the audio. So as soon as I ran through the rain, from that point all the way to the end of the video, the audio is screwed up. It's like all distorted, and you get this roaring sound in the background because somehow my microphone got wet. No matter how hard I tried to keep it dry, some moisture got in and it ruined the audio. I still kept it because you could still hear what I'm saying, but it's so annoying to hear that terrible sound. But of course, in real time, as I'm walking around recording, I'm not aware that there's a problem with the audio because it's not like I have headphones plugged into the GoPro and then I'm monitoring the audio as I'm recording. No, I'm just talking into this Rode Wireless Go, and I'm just going on faith that it's working. It's sending a signal to the Rode Wireless Go receiver, and that is going into the GoPro, and everything is working. Of course, in a Hollywood production, you have a sound department, and all they do is sit at their massive mixing boards and recording equipment, and they've all got headphones on, and they're listening to the audio as the movie is being shot. While they're filming, people, their job is to listen for problems. And of course, as a YouTuber, it's just you can't listen to the audio while you're recording. And time and again, I'm recording a video and then later on I'm editing, and while I'm editing, then I discover an audio problem. But of course, by then it's way too late. Either there's no audio at all because the cord unplugged or something, or the battery died and I didn't realize that it died, or as in this case, a drop of water got into the microphone jack. Luckily, I don't think it did any permanent damage. Eventually, it just dried out, and now it works fine as far as I know. But yeah, the technical problems of shooting video and then editing video and then exporting video and then uploading video at every stage. There's a jungle of deadly technical problems and traps waiting for you. And they get me every single time. It's so crazy. But hopefully, smooth sailing. This video will export properly. This video will be recorded properly. Let's see how it goes. Speaking of technology, just a little side note. I mentioned that I got a bag out of storage that had my 2 camera lenses in it. But that bag contained a whole bunch of other stuff, little electronic goodies that I have in my life, and I quite enjoy having them, but they're too heavy to carry around. So when I went to Sumatra with my backpack, I took a lot of these things out of my bag because I have too much camera gear to begin with. I can't carry a lot of other stuff. So it was really nice to be reunited with these things. I don't have the first thing right in front of me. I don't know where it is, right? I think it's up there. I have a Kindle. So I do have an older model. It's not one of the newer ones, but it's an old Amazon Kindle, a book reader, an e-reader. And I love being reunited with that. So when I'm out wandering around on the MRT now, if I'm not recording a video and I'm not listening to a podcast, now I pop out my ebook reader and I'm reading a book while I'm out there in the LRT, which I do enjoy reading, even though I don't tend to read very much anymore. It's nice to be reunited with the Kindle and be reminded that the written word exists. The entire universe does not consist of YouTube videos. It's nice to know that, oh yeah, books, forgot about those. So I was reunited with my Kindle, and I have one of my favorite items in the whole world. Was given to me long ago in Mesot by a Planet Doug subscriber, a GBL Clip Bluetooth speaker, which I love because I'm always listening to podcasts in the shower, and this is my podcast smartphone, but you just know every time you bring this into the bathroom, you're just asking for trouble. It hasn't happened yet, but deep down in your lizard brain, you know at some point you're going to drop it in the toilet, you're going to drop it in the sink, it's going to fall in the shower, it's going to get splashed on, and you're going to ruin your smartphone at some point. Hasn't happened yet, but it will happen eventually if you keep bringing your phone into the bathroom. It's inevitable. So that's where this comes in. I just leave this here beside my bed where it always is. I start the podcast, and then I turn on this waterproof speaker with a nice little clip on it. Now there's the clip. Waterproof, solid, much better sound, of course, much louder, much clearer, has bass. My smartphones never have any bass. So then I can take this into the shower and I don't have to worry about it. I just put it there and I can just walk around with this thing because it has a Bluetooth connection. I just pick it up and I'm like walking around. And I'm making this head bobbing motion, not because of podcasts, because I was also reunited with my little iPhone SE. I think it's an iPhone SE. I'm not up on my iPhone nomenclature, but yeah, it's an SE. And ages ago, I sat down with this phone one time and I took the time to copy my entire digital music library onto this phone. So it's just such a lovely little thing. I mean, I don't have a huge use for it in my life. I don't use it as a smartphone. I don't do anything else with it because I have my normal Samsung phones that I use for everything. But such a beautiful little thing. It's so small, it's so lightweight. I love to have this thing. And now I play music on this and I link it up with Bluetooth to my speaker. So over the last few days, whenever I got all these electronics back, I've been listening to a lot of music. BTO in particular. I have a copy of Not Fragile by BTO, Bachman Turner Overdrive, and I've been playing that album over and over again. It's a great shower album. It's very upbeat, very happy, very rock and roll, energizing music from BTO, so I love listening to that. And I'm a big fan of classical music, so I was going through my classical library over the past couple of weeks. Bach is one of my favorites, the Brandenburg concertos, things like that. But yeah, music. So I've been listening to a lot of music in my life. That's been a lot of fun. Using my little iPhone SE Kindle to read books. And then just some fun little toys. Another Planet Doug subscriber ages ago gave me this GoPro Session. Are they Heroes? I think that's like a Hero as well, GoPro Hero Session. I believe this is version number 5. And to be honest, I've never really used it. The subscriber who gave it to me, he never used it either. He bought it at some point, but then found he ended up not using it because other cameras were easier. These sessions don't have a screen. You can only operate it by this little LCD screen on the top. You have to go through a lot of complicated button presses in order to cycle through the menu. Use one button to get to the menu, then another button to open the menu, then another button to scroll down, and then another button to select it, and you're looking at this tiny screen. It's not a great user experience because you don't have any kind of a touchscreen menu or anything like that. And of course, for my purposes, this has no microphone jack, and the stabilization is nowhere near as good as modern GoPros are. So I've taken this out and I've played around with it. It's so small, that's the key thing. And it's such a clever little device. It's so interesting. Even though I've never used it, it's fun to have. It has this little case. So when you take the GoPro out itself, that little cube, it's just so cool. And you've got this little cage, slides into the cage, which locks into position. GoPro fingers on the bottom, and you can just mount this anywhere. And if I were living in a home, I had a house or an apartment, and you had kind of a junk drawer for all your electronics, I would keep this, of course. And who knows, you might have a million uses for it. You can set it up as a security camera. You could use it in your car as a kind of dash cam, things like that. If you're riding a bike, you could just pop this onto your bike, and you're going to get some video. It won't be as good as a Hero 12 or an Action 4 or anything, but you're going to get usable video from it. And a little device like this is just a lot of fun to have. You could mount it on a chest harness. Yeah, just a cute little thing. So I've been playing around with that a little bit. So yeah, being reunited with all of my old technology has been a lot of fun. A funny story for me is that I recently took a strong interest in tourism taxes around the world. So every time I would see a news story about a country implementing a tourist tax, I click on that article and I read about it. And there was recently a tourism tax implemented in Bali, which is kind of odd when you think about it, because it's not for Indonesia. Malaysia has the annoying 10 ringgit per night tourism tax, which I hate so much, but it's for the whole country. But Indonesia, they've implemented a tourism tax only for Bali, which is kind of odd when you think about it. But that's what they've done. So I've been following the stories about this. And now that Google knows I'm interested in that story, every time there's some news from Bali about the tax, it ends up in my Google News feed. And there was a recent article caught my eye because it said in the headline something about problems with the Bali tourism tax. And my first thought, because I'm a dummy, my first thought was, oh, they're learning that it's a really bad idea. The problem is that it's backfiring, that tourists are upset about the tax, and now people aren't going to Bali anymore. So now the authorities are thinking, oh, we made a mistake and we should be removing the tax. That's what I thought the article would be about. But of course, I'm a dummy. It turns out that problems with the tourism tax was referring to the fact that not enough tourists are paying the tax. So basically, when the authorities created the tax and now they say there's a problem with the tax, the problem they're talking about is we're not making enough money. That's their point of view on all of these things. Yeah, there's a big problem with this tax. The problem is we're not getting rich enough off all these tourists. We're not making enough money. And the problem, of course, is that this tax, the way it was implemented, is not forced. There's no automated system that makes everybody pay the tax. It's not voluntary. It is mandatory by policy, by law. Every tourist who arrives in Bali must pay this tax, but there's no physical mechanism that forces them to do so. So I think the numbers in the article were that maybe 60% of visitors were paying the tax, 40% were not. Let me double check that figure. No, it's the opposite. Only 40% are paying the tax, 60% are not paying the tax. And a lot of those people don't know about it. Like, nobody knows the tourism tax exists. So that's one reason 60% are not paying the tax. And then there's a whole bunch of other people who, when they're confronted, like, you haven't paid the tax, why haven't you paid the tax? They say, I did pay the tax, didn't I? They think they did because they paid $35 or 500,000 rupiah for the visa on arrival. I think that's kind of a new fee that Indonesia put in place recently. I don't know how long ago that was. But anyway, people say, well, I paid for my, and they're thinking of their visa on arrival. But now the authorities are telling them, no, you have to pay that, but you also have to pay the tourism tax now, another 150,000 rupiah. And people think they paid it, people don't know about it, and there's a lot of other people who know about it, but then they just go through the airport and they don't know how to pay it. It's like, I know I have to pay this tax, and I don't mind paying the tax, these people say, but I don't know. I went through the airport and there was baggage claim, there's immigration, and then we left the airport. At what point was I supposed to pay the tax? Because they have to go online, download the app, sign up through the app, pay the tax online, look for the counter. They have to go looking for a place to pay the tax. It's not instituted as an automatic procedure. And all of this leads to only 40% of the people actually paying the tax. So the authorities who decided that, oh, we're not getting enough money out of this, their solution to the problem is to use authority to enforce it. So now they're talking about, now they have police patrols out on the streets and they do spot checks. So they just go up, and their job is to go up and down the streets of Bali, all the big tourist towns, and they just stop foreigners on the street and demand to see their proof that they paid the tourism tax. And I guess if you paid it, you end up getting a QR code on your phone that shows you paid it or something. Maybe other people get a piece of paper, I don't know. But in any event, the police are doing spot checks all over the place. And of course, tourists have different reactions to that. Some of them get very upset. They're walking down the street on their holiday that they paid a lot of money for, flights and hotels and food, and they're there to have a good time. And then police are now stopping them on the street and demanding to see their papers. And that's not what anybody wants on their holiday. And they feel like it's just a lot of people don't know about the tax, so it feels like these police are scamming them, right? They don't know about the tax, and these police are saying, oh, you have to pay 150,000 rupiah. And they're like, what are you talking about? They feel like they're trying to rip them off, and they get angry. The whole thing to me seems like a mess. And now they're making hotels demand to see the tourism tax receipt when they check into the hotel. And if you go to a waterfall or a beautiful tourist attraction lookout point, you want to go down the zip line, whatever attractions are on Bali these days, now you go there, and the people who own that attraction and they're selling you the ticket, now they'll say, oh, can we see your tourism tax receipt? So how many times are you going to have to present your receipt over and over during your 2 weeks on Bali? Anyway, perhaps I'm making too big a meal about this, but it is a pet peeve of mine. I just found that article amusing, that my first reaction, problems with the tax. I thought they were thinking from the point of view of the tourist, that, oh, the problem is tourists don't like it. And no, the problem is they're not getting enough money. And that's what they think the problem is. Anyway, very, very funny story, but also very, very annoying at the same time for visitors to Bali. It's been a while since I recorded one of these behind the scenes videos, so I've had a lot of experiences I could talk about. Hopefully I can go through them quickly rather than tell a long story about each one. That would take forever. One of the things that happened is a friend of mine, Wandereats, Darren, he's been in contact with a couple of YouTubers from Australia, Beth and Paul. And I know Beth and Paul a little bit because we've emailed back and forth a little bit as well. But I had never met Beth and Paul. But apparently, yeah, they were here in Kuala Lumpur for a holiday. And then Darren met up with them one time. And then he arranged a lunch to get people together. So Darren set this thing up. He chose a restaurant at Lau Yat Plaza called Hong Kong Food Culture. And he invited Beth and Paul from Australia. That's the name of their YouTube channel, Beth and Paul. And he invited me, Planet Doug. And then he invited Remote Darren, another Malaysia-based YouTuber. He's from the UK, but Remote Darren has spent a lot of time in Malaysia. And I think he'll be here much more in the future. And a lot of his videos are about Kuala Lumpur and Malaysia in general. So I think of him as kind of Malaysia-based YouTuber, Remote Darren. And I know Remote Darren online. We've talked back and forth, but I had never met him in person either. So I was looking forward to the lunch so I could meet Remote Darren, meet Beth and Paul. And then I invited my friend Jamie, the American who's been here for a couple of weeks, who's gone now, by the way. He went back to the United States. And I invited another local YouTuber, Expat Pete. So he came to the lunch as well. I think that's everybody. Right. And I didn't shoot any video about it, but Daryl, I didn't know about this, which is kind of funny. Daryl filmed the whole lunch, but he started filming right from the very beginning. So he's using a DJI Action 4 camera, and I didn't realize this, but he had the Action 4 mounted inside his car. He came to pick me up at my hotel and drive me there. So I was waiting outside. I've done this with Daryl a lot. I wait at a certain point. He comes up in his car. I hop in the front seat and off we go. So I did that. I hopped in his front seat, but Daryl had his camera running. He's a YouTuber. Of course, he's got a camera running, but it never even occurred to me. So for the first few minutes of the video, I'm in the car chatting with Daryl, and I had no idea I was being recorded. Of course, I don't mind being recorded. People can record me anytime, day or night. I'm fine with it. As a YouTuber, it'd be pretty hypocritical if I had a problem with being recorded. But I thought that was kind of funny that I'm so aware of cameras and shooting YouTube videos, and there I was being filmed for a YouTube video, and I didn't even know. So for the first little while, I'm chatting with Daryl in the car, and then we picked up Beth and Paul, and then we went to the restaurant. Everybody else joined us, and then Daryl kept his camera recording. He didn't make a big deal out of it. He didn't go around and put a microphone on each of us and set up multiple cameras, and he didn't make a big production out of it. He took a wireless microphone, put it in the middle of the table, a big round table, to capture all of our voices, and then he occasionally took out his Action 4 and just sort of filmed people around the table. I haven't even watched the whole video yet. I've watched about half of it. I've sort of been working my way through. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. Of course, I'll put a link to that video here in the my video description. So that was one thing that I did. I enjoyed that a lot. Got to chat with a lot of other YouTubers, and I came away from that meetup feeling good in a way, because it was just fun to hang out with other YouTubers, share stories about making videos, having a YouTube channel, and I felt sort of inspired and invigorated and excited about making more videos for Planet Doug. So that worked out really quite well. I enjoyed that. And just as we were leaving, Beth and Paul gave me a present. They gave me a bag of Cadbury caramel chocolates. They were amazing. They were so good. I didn't know that they were caramel at first. I thought they were chocolates. And then I bit in. I put the whole, I think I took the first one, popped it in my mouth, and then I'm dissolving the chocolate, going, oh, this is so good. But then I hit the caramel that was in the inside, and that doubled the pleasure. That was very, very good. So I enjoyed that quite a bit. So that was the Wandereats organized YouTuber meetup. And the funny thing is, when Daryl picked me up in his car, I was the first pickup, and then we went around to where Beth and Paul were staying, and they got in the car, and then while we were all getting settled in and chatting, and we were making jokes about who's the star, Daryl said something about how Planet Doug, I was the guest of honor, but that wasn't true, actually. Beth and Paul were the guests of honor. But Daryl, his idea was to have this lunch so that Beth and Paul and I could meet in person. He set that up for us. And I said, no, Beth and Paul, they're the guests of honor. But then I went on to say that Daryl was the glue that held our social group together. I don't know if that's a common concept, but I think about that all the time. When you have a group of friends, people that know each other, and spend time together, usually one person is the glue of that social group. I remember watching The Big Bang Theory, and you've got such weird, unusual characters, right? Leonard and Raj and Sheldon and Penny. They're all very, very different people. Howard, Bernadette, and they form a friendship group. But when you think about it, it's Leonard that has the connection with every single person. So in that case, Leonard was the glue holding that social group together. And when it comes to my life in Kuala Lumpur, Daryl really is the glue. He's the glue that organizes these social gatherings. So he has a good, strong relationship with Beth and Paul, a good, strong relationship with me, with remote Darren. So he's the center of our little social group. He's the glue that holds us all together. And I said that in the car, and I think it's actually quite true. Yeah. Another social event in my life, I made a community tab post about it, that a Planet Doug subscriber reached out to me and invited me to go watch Dune 2 at the big IMAX theater at Sunway Velocity. And that was a very good experience, yeah, very enjoyable. The movie, of course, is quite good. Everybody is raving about it. And I know a lot about Dune. Dune 1 I've watched. The new one with the Denis Villeneuve version, I've watched Dune 1. And I'm very familiar with the books. I've read them. And I know the David Lynch 1984 version of Dune. I've watched that many times in my life. So going to see Dune 2 is a no-brainer. I assumed I'd be watching it at some point. But now I had the chance to see it in an IMAX theater. And that was quite interesting. I arranged to meet the Planet Doug subscriber there. He came by car and parked in the parking lot of Sunway Velocity. I got there on my own on the LRT to Maluri Station, and then I walked from Maluri Station to Sunway Velocity. It's kind of funny, in a lot of my recent videos, I guess in all of my KL videos, I do talk a lot about the transit system. I always talk about and show how I get to places. I always think of that as part of the experience. So which LRT line I take, this monorail, what station I get into, where I transfer. And then quite often in the comments, of course, people who live in KL will look at how I got there. And then, of course, they'll always point out, wow, you could have got there this way, and this would have been much better and more efficient and faster. So I get all that feedback all the time. So this time I took the LRT directly from Masjid Jamak to Maluri Station. And someone did leave a comment saying, well, you could have taken the Kajang line, and he said to Old Town Station. And I guess he was telling me this because he thought it would have been a better way to go. So I was thinking about that. It's like, oh, is that really true? Because I know the Kajang line goes there. There's actually a Maluri Kajang line station. So there's an LRT line and an MRT line going right by Sunway Velocity, but both stations are called Maluri. It's Maluri LRT and Maluri MRT. And I'm aware of that. I've taken both all the time. Sometimes I get confused. I think I'm going to go on to the LRT, and yet suddenly I find myself on the platform of the MRT. I'm like, how the heck did I get here? I do get confused sometimes because I'm talking into the GoPro, and I just naturally go down into the MRT, go down to the platform, but I intended to go past the MRT building and then go up the stairs to the LRT, but somehow I get on autopilot and I end up on the MRT by mistake. But that's fine. It's just a little bit more roundabout, because then I have to take the MRT to Pasar Seni and then transfer to the Kelana Jaya line and then get to Masjid Jamak. So it involves two lines, whereas the LRT is a straight shot on the Shri Petaling line. But anyway, this Planet Doug comment said, oh, you should have taken the Kajang line to Old Town Station. So of course, whenever I'm told something, I'm instantly doing my own sleuthing. I'm on Google going, Old Town, I've never heard of Old Town Station. It's like, this is new to me. How do I not know about Old Town Station? So I was doing my research, and as far as I can tell, no, it's not Old Town Station. That's not the name of it. It is on the Kajang line, but he was talking about Cochrane Station. And right beside Cochrane is Old Town, some kind of a shopping mall called Old Town. And maybe people think of it as the Old Town stop, but I think of it as Cochrane because that's the official name of the MRT stop. And I guess he was suggesting it because when you go to the Maluri station, you have to walk outside and then go along a long sidewalk and then over a pedestrian bridge to get to the mall. But if you go to Cochrane station, you're pretty much inside the shopping mall right away. You're just there. And for some reason, I never go that way. I don't know why. I think I find Cochrane station difficult to find from inside the mall, but I know how to get to Maluri station quite easily. So that's just become my go-to place. I just go to Maluri LRT or MRT. But I could also have gone one more stop. I could have taken the Kajang line to Cochrane station, and then I would have been right inside the mall. So that was kind of interesting. But anyway, I took the LRT to go straight there, and then I walked through the mall. Never been to that theater before. It was a long ways away inside the mall. Had to walk quite a long distance, go up several floors. Big movie theater, very nice one, and they had a big lounge area with maybe 20 tables with comfortable chairs. It looks like somebody's living room, and that's where people waiting for their movie to start, you can go there, sit down with your friends and chat and things like that. So I was there first, and I went in and I sat down, and then my new friend, he showed up a little bit later, and we waited there until the movie was scheduled to start. They have a whole system, I guess, with a sign, and then you watch the sign, and when it starts flashing, that tells you it's time to go to your theater and take your seat. Really comfortable, big IMAX theater, huge lounge chairs that recline. They recline, and you could just fall asleep in those chairs quite easily. And my friend, as he bought the tickets, he paid for me. He treated me to the movie. And when he bought the tickets, he also bought me a hot latte because he watches Planet Doug videos and he knows I love hot lattes. But of course, I didn't really want to drink the latte during the movie because you drink a gallon of coffee during the movie and now you're suddenly running to the bathroom all the time. And this was going to be a nearly 3-hour movie, right? So I did say to him, do you think we can get the coffee afterwards? And he had bought the tickets online. He's up to speed with all the modern technology. It's not like he bought a ticket at a counter and has a piece of paper that you give to the guy. Remember the old days when you did that and you give the guy the piece of paper and he tears it a little bit and then gives it back to you? There's the whole Seinfeld episode where George and the gang went to movies, and then George had to leave to look for somebody, and he was going to come back in, and the guy demanded to see his stub, his ticket stub, before he would let him back in. And poor George, of course, he always gets in trouble, and he says to the guy, you just saw me come out. I just walked by you 2 seconds ago. So you know I've already paid, but the guy says, no, I have to see your stub, sir. And then George is looking. He has to find his little piece of paper that the guy tore, and he can't find it anywhere. So I remember those days. And of course, these days, nobody does that. You go online, you've got the app for that theater, you buy the tickets online, you got the QR code, and then you use that QR code when you go through the turnstile. There is a human being standing there letting people in, but you just take your phone and you lay your phone down flat on this glass panel, and then it looks for the QR code, reads it, comes up on the computer, and says, oh, yes, you paid for the ticket, and then they let you in. And we did the same thing with the coffee. So after the movie, we went up to the counter, and he still had the QR code, and the information in the QR code, they have to scan it, and then it says 1 latte. And they gave me a cup, empty cup. You bring it to a machine, and then you put the cup there, and then you have to look for the buttons. You want the latte At that point, I guess you could change your mind. If you don't want a latte anymore, you could get an Americano or a cappuccino, whatever it is. But I still wanted a latte, and you hit the button for latte. And it was really good. Piping hot, strong coffee flavor, a lot of good foam, a lot of milk. Yeah, really good. It was a great latte. I was very surprised coming out of a machine like that. Yeah, good experience. For me, as I've talked about often in the past, I find the audio levels in movie theaters and IMAX theaters in particular is way too loud. It hurts my ears. And I don't think I'm particularly sensitive. I think I'm probably losing my hearing as I'm getting older, so I don't think my ears are even that strong anymore. But with that sound, especially when they're showing the movie trailers and all the commercials at the beginning, it hits hard and it's painful. And sometimes I'm sitting in a theater and I'll end up watching the whole movie plugging my ears, which is kind of ridiculous. And sometimes if I remember, I'll bring earplugs. I use earplugs for sleeping. And then if I remember, I'll bring earplugs to the movie theater, which is kind of ridiculous, that I put in earplugs while I watch the movie. But that can be kind of embarrassing. You've got these big orange, my earplugs are bright orange, and everyone can look at you and see that you have these huge earplugs in, and that looks kind of weird. So what I do now is I always have earphones with me to plug into a phone to listen to podcasts or something. So I'll just take out my earphones and then I'll put earphones in, and I put them in kind of loosely because I still want the crisp sound. I don't want muffled sound, but somehow those earphones deaden the sound just enough. I can still hear everything perfectly, but it's not hurting my eardrums anymore. So I did do that at the time. But I find, you're a little bit self-conscious about doing these things, so I'm just sort of pulling out my earphones and then just sort of putting it in like this and grabbing the next one. I'm not doing anything strange. You don't have to cart me off to the mental hospital. Like, don't pay any attention to what this weird man is doing over there. And of course, there are the other issues with theaters, particularly IMAX theaters. They're so cold. They're freezing cold. And I prepare for it normally. So this time I wore long pants because I knew if I wore shorts, I would have been freezing to death. So you wear long pants, and you really should bring a jacket, which feels weird to bring a jacket to the movie theater. But my companion, he brought blankets. He actually was thoughtful enough to bring 2 blankets. So he had 1 blanket for him, and then he tried to give me a second blanket, but to be honest, I felt weird about putting on that blanket, so I just, it's okay. And then putting on the blanket with my earphones, it's going to pull them out, and it's just one more hassle dealing with that. If I had a jacket, I would wear a jacket in the theater, but somehow curling up inside a blanket just felt a bit weird to me, so I was like, nah, no thanks. Thank you, but no. He could put both blankets on if he wants to, but that's okay. But it was pretty chilly in there. It was pretty cold. And what else about the movie? About the movie itself, I don't really have anything to say. I know the story quite well. The movie was good. And I don't think it hit me as strongly as it hit everyone else. I enjoyed it, but I wasn't really pulled into the story. I didn't lose myself in the story because, as I talked about, I know the story so well that it didn't pull me in. I'm just waiting for the big scenes to come because I know what the scenes are, and maybe the newness of the experience, the IMAX, being there with a Planet Doug subscriber, the new theater, all these things maybe just made me more aware of where I was, and I didn't really just turn off my brain and get lost in the story. I was sort of, the entire time, I was aware that I was sitting in a theater staring at a screen. And part of it too is that the IMAX theater screen is so big, I find it too much, to be honest. I know IMAXs have the best image quality and the best sound, the best seats, the best of everything, but somehow the best can be a bit much. I've had this feeling about movie theaters in general lately. Again, in the old days, the focus was the movie. And I like that. I went to tons of movies when I was living in Canada, back in my youth, I suppose. And I was a big fan of repertory cinemas, where you pay a very, very cheap price, and they're showing old movies, old classic movies. And I would go to these theaters in Toronto quite a bit. And if I went to a first run theater, a first run movie in my hometown or something like that, what I would do is go to the theater during the day when I know it's going to be empty, there's going to be no other people to bother me, and then I'll go into the theater. And it's a very simple, casual thing where you go up to the little ticket window, one please, and they give you the little ticket stub, and you go to the guy, he tears it, I put it in my wallet. I go into the movie theater, it's quiet, it's simple, it's not luxurious, just normal chairs. And what I will do is I will get a seat right against the far wall on the left or the right. I never sit in the middle, because in the middle you run the risk of everybody else sitting around you. So what I do is I go to an area where I know nobody else is going to sit. I go way off to the left, sit right against the wall. So in fact, I'm looking at the screen from an angle which is not ideal, but because I'm so far away in probably the worst seat in the theater, I know nobody's going to come sit beside me. Nobody's going to sit behind me. Nobody's going to sit in front of me. Nobody's going to be looking at their phone. Well, back in those days, there were no phones, but nobody's going to be eating popcorn and slurping Pepsis and doing all the other annoying things. Nobody's going to be talking around me. So I will go sit in the furthest seat away that I can find. That's what I normally do. And then because of all that, I lose myself in the story of the movie. My brain switches off and I'm in the movie, and I enjoy it so much. It's a very deep enjoyment that I get. But then movie theaters became bigger, more elaborate, more luxurious, crazier. So now when you go to a modern movie theater, it's such a complicated experience with the apps and the ticket buying and the QR code and the coffee bar and the lounge, and then going into an IMAX theater, massive screen, and the screen is so big you don't even know where to look. Action is happening in the movie, but is it over there? Is it over there? You have to move your head around in order to follow the story. And in Dune 2, there's a lot of extended scenes where the characters are just talking into the camera, and the camera is like a zoomed close-up. So their entire head is filling the screen. So you're sitting there in your seat and it's like, oh, this huge head just right in your face. And it's too much. It's too big a screen. And of course, my friend wanted me to have the best experience possible. So he deliberately chose seats, the perfect seats, the best seats in the house, right in the middle, right in front of the screen. But of course, because we were sitting in the middle, all the seats around us were taken. So I was conscious of the people, this older man sitting beside me, and then other people beside him, and the people behind me. You hear them talking, you hear them rustling. They're getting up, leaving the theater to go to the bathroom, to get some snacks, to come back in. So the whole time I was distracted by how loud the music was, how huge the screen was, how comfortable the seat was, all the people around me. There are just so many distractions that in fact I don't really enjoy the movies as much. Where in the old days it would be a simple, broken down, dirty old theater, and I sit way off in the dark all by myself, and then I lose myself in the story. And I kind of enjoy that experience a little bit more. Modern theaters. I remember I went to another IMAX theater with a Planet Doug subscriber at One Utama shopping center. And it was a similar thing there. When you go into the theater itself, it's like an amusement park, playgrounds and coffee bars, and it was all a bit too fancy. You end up, your brain thinks about all of these things all around you, where in a simple theater, you're thinking about the story, you're thinking about the movie, you're thinking about the characters, the plot. And I kind of enjoy that more. Oh, like the circus environment that you see in movie theaters now is a bit too much. To me, it takes away from the enjoyment of the movie itself. But it's one of the reasons I don't go to movie theaters anymore. I would much rather watch a movie on my phone. If you said, like, to me personally, take away the social angle, because you can go to the movies with a friend, that's different. But if you said to me, oh, here's this movie, it's really, really great, and I want to watch that movie, and I have a choice, I can watch it on my phone, or I can go to the theater, and it's just my choice, I'll actually watch it on my phone. I'll enjoy that more than going to a movie theater. So, but again, it's just a personal quirk, one of many on Planet Doug. Good news, my export of my other behind-the-scenes video did not fail at the same spot that it did before. So whatever I did, either all the things I deleted fixed the problem, maybe one of those graphics was corrupted or something, or the computer itself just glitched for no reason at all. But whatever happened last time, it didn't happen so far this time, and I think I'm at 99% looking from here. And I get so nervous when one of these video projects gets to 98 or 99%, because that's when it normally fails. And then it's so frustrating because it can take an hour and a half, 2 hours to export one of these BTS videos, and you wait the whole 2 hours, and then right at the last minute, it fails. And you don't know why. At 99%, when it is supposed to finish the export, save the file, then something goes wrong, and then you have to start it all over again with no confidence that it's even going to work the second time anyway. But I think it finished. Let me go check. I want to see completed on there. And once it is completed, pro tip, don't wait. So right now I exported that video file to an external hard drive because I have no more room on my computer's internal drive. So I only have one copy of that video file. So as soon as it's done, check it, play it back to make sure that it's okay, and then make a second copy and copy it to your other external drive. So that's what I'm going to do right now, just to make sure so I don't lose. The last thing you want to do is go to all this work, finally export it, and then you accidentally delete that file or something, or you try to copy it, you try to do something and it gets lost. So you want to have a backup copy. So I'm going to do that right now before I move on to my next behind the scenes story. The good news continues. Everything went fine. The video saved, and I was able to copy it to another hard drive. So I have 2 copies for safekeeping. And now I just have to copy it again, I guess, from a hard drive onto this phone, and then I upload it from this phone to YouTube. A very complex process here on Planet Doug. And I said I wasn't going to spend a long time on each of my stories, but I am failing at that. I seem to have babbled on quite a bit about these things that I've done over the past few days. But I still have more things to talk about. I mentioned I was going to talk about my mystery assistant, and the story of my mystery assistant, who also gave me this lovely t-shirt, involves going to a Ramadan Bazaar. And I've seen quite a few videos on YouTube from vloggers that are here in Malaysia, either in Kuala Lumpur or Penang. I'm just in the middle of one Ramadan Bazaar video from Penang, which I'm probably going to talk about as well. I haven't watched the whole video just a few minutes of it, but there's something interesting there. So yeah, Ramadan Bazaars. I've seen all these videos, and I wasn't really going to do the same thing. But it occurred to me that, well, yeah, let's do it. Everybody has to eat, right? So I figured I might as well, when I get food one of these nights, I can go to a Ramadan Bazaar. And I started thinking about doing it because the other day when I went with Jamie out walking around KL, it turns out there was a big Ramadan Bazaar right near my hotel, just a short couple of blocks away. There's a big one right here. And I thought at the very least, one evening I can grab a GoPro, go there, and then film the experience of getting some food. And I guess I was a little bit reluctant to do it because I thought the filming would be difficult because of the crowding in one of these bazaars, and then you're busy buying all this food from people and you're having to pay for it and put the food away, and doing all of that while holding onto a camera is really hard to do. It's stressful and it's frustrating, and yeah, it's a lot of work going to any kind of a market and then going to a Ramadan Bazaar, which I guess I don't really understand that well. I don't really know what they're all about. And one more thing, this might be a little bit of a controversial thing or a little bit of a hot take, I'm not sure. I was basically, because of the YouTube videos that I watched, not because of the bazaars themselves, but because of the videos, I started to feel a little bit uncomfortable with them, because my idea of what Ramadan is all about, I know a little bit about the history and a little bit of the meaning of Ramadan. So there are this idea basically of fasting. I'm trying to work through my thoughts here, get them clear in my head. I think that's the starting point, that in the month of Ramadan, Muslims fast during daylight hours. And I think in the West, if you ask anybody what Ramadan is all about, they know about fasting. Everybody talks about fasting. That's one thing they know. But for me, the fasting isn't the important part, because fasting is just a means to an end. The reason you fast is to separate yourself from physical desires, physical needs. The month is supposed to be about reflection, about prayer, about charity. And if you are fasting, that's the point of fasting. It's not a physical challenge. It's not a physical thing at all. What it is intended to do, from how I understand it, is to take your focus away from the body, the physical world, because it's not just no food, it's no food, no water, no smoking, no sex. All of these things, you abstain from all of those during the month of Ramadan, and that allows you to think about the spiritual, the mental. It's supposed to promote prayer and reflection and the spiritual side of being, as opposed to the physical side. So that's my understanding of Ramadan. And then the Ramadan, well, there's also this idea of community. I don't want to leave that out. That's also an important part of Ramadan, that at the end of the day, you're fasting all day, and then you break your fast with your family or with a group of friends. And that supports a concept of community and charity. The idea of charity in Islam is also supposed to promote the idea of community. So, and I remember when I was in the country of Guinea in West Africa, I was there for Ramadan as well, and I experienced a lot of events there connected with Ramadan. And I remember that getting new clothing was a big part of Ramadan as well, because I guess you're cleansing things and starting new, and part of that is getting new clothing for yourself, or if you're in a family, brand new clean clothing for your children. So you see Ramadan bazaars not just about food, but you also see Ramadan bazaars that are selling other items such as clothing. I saw one in a bank here. I went up to Maybank the other day, and there was a Ramadan Bazaar happening inside Maybank, but it was all about clothing. So everybody was there. It was very, very busy, mainly women, but the women were buying all this brand new clothing for themselves, their husbands, and for their children. And then during Ramadan, they put on new clothing as well. So a Ramadan Bazaar is a place where you go to have this sense of community. You go there with other people, and then you can buy the food that you're going to take home and then break your fast with members of your family or with friends. And then you could also buy new clothing while you're at the bazaar as well. So this is my limited understanding of the traditions of Ramadan. And yet most of the YouTube videos that I've seen, they actually focus only on the food. And it's almost like the idea is you fast all day so you become really hungry, and then you can go to the bazaar and gorge yourself on all this amazing food, and you can buy all this food and then you can try it all. So it's being treated more like a normal night market experience rather than a spiritual community aspect of Ramadan itself. So I don't know if that makes any sense. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh. I remember watching one video where I talked about it already, I think, where some YouTubers started with a website that had a list of all of the Ramadan foods that are popular. And they went to the bazaar almost like a challenge. What they wanted to do was buy every one of the foods on the list. I think there were like 20 of them. So they bought samples of all 20 dishes, and then they brought them back to their hotel or back to their condo, and then they sat down and ate all of the food. And that approach to a Ramadan bazaar felt weird to me. And I saw all this talk about, oh, I ate so much, oh, I'm bursting, oh, so much good food, this is amazing, this is delicious. And the focus was all on the opposite of what I think Ramadan is about. When you break your fast, you're not supposed to suddenly just gorge yourself on as much food as possible. No, you break your fast simply with good food, with friends and with family. Anyway, maybe I'm making too much out of this topic, but because of that, I was a little bit reluctant to go to a Ramadan bazaar and shoot my own video. But I decided to do it, and then I was chatting with a friend of mine who I met through my YouTube channel, and I mentioned that I'm planning to go to this Ramadan bazaar, and my mystery assistant, she said, oh, I'd like to go as well. Why don't we go together? And so I thought, yeah, great idea. So we arranged the two of us to go. And so since the two of us were going together, I thought instead of going to this bazaar near my hotel, which I got the impression it was a little bit of a commercial one. It's in the middle of a lot of department stores and things. And I thought, well, why don't we look for a more interesting one? And I looked at the list online of all the bazaars in KL, the features of each one, their location, what they're like. And I finally settled on Kampong Baru to go there. It's near my hotel, it's easy to get to, and Kampong Baru is a traditional part of Kuala Lumpur. So I thought the Ramadan Bazaar there would be an interesting one to visit. So that's what we decided to do, and my mystery assistant came here to my hotel. We met up here and then walked to the LRT station, took the LRT to Kampong Baru station, and then walked from there into Kampong Baru. So far, so good. And my idea was actually in the video to talk about all these things that I just talked about. I haven't seen the video I shot yet, so I don't know if I made any sense or not. But I wanted to talk about the history of Ramadan, which of course, the whole point, well, not the whole point, but the celebration of Ramadan is based on the idea of the first revelation. which was when the angel Gabriel came down and revealed the first parts, the first sections of the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad. And this happened in a cave, I believe. It's in a mountain outside of Mecca. So the Prophet Muhammad was in this cave, and the archangel Gabriel appeared to him and then revealed to him the Quran. So the month of Ramadan, the 9th month of the lunar calendar, the Islamic lunar calendar, it's the 9th month, and the month itself is called Ramadan. So Ramadan is the name of the celebration, but it's also the name of the entire month as well. And it celebrates, as I said, the Archangel Gabriel revealing the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad. And that is what the celebration is about. And then I wanted to talk about that. This happened, I believe, in 610 AD. I think that's the year that it occurred. That's the date traditionally given to it. And something else I wanted to talk about, and something I found really fascinating, is that the Islamic solar calendar, it doesn't employ any intercalation. And intercalation is the process of adjusting your calendar to keep it in sync with the movements of the Earth around the sun. So for example, the solar calendar, we have 365 days a year, but it doesn't match the movement of the Earth perfectly. So every 4 years, we have a leap year, and the leap year adds 1 day, and now that brings our calendar back into sync with the physical world. So that's how the solar calendar adjusts to the movement of the Earth and the sun. But the Islamic lunar calendar, based on the motion of the Earth, the moon around the Earth, it doesn't use any intercalation. So it, in fact, drifts out of sync with the solar calendar. So Ramadan can happen any time of year. Every year, Ramadan happens, I believe, 11 days earlier than it did the year before. And this is something I've noticed in my lifetime because I keep showing up in countries and being surprised that it's Ramadan, because Ramadan is not associated with a physical season. For example, a holiday like Christmas is based on the solar calendar, and it happens on December 25th every year, and December 25th is always in the winter. So Christmas always occurs in the winter. Halloween always occurs in the fall, etc. But Ramadan can happen in the winter, can happen in the summer, can happen in the fall, can happen in the rainy season, the dry season, because it drifts around the year all the time. And Ramadan can happen any time of the year. You just never know unless you're keeping track of it. So anyway, I found that kind of interesting, and I talked about that as well. So my idea when I went to the Kampong Baru Ramadan Bazaar was to talk about all these things and the history of Ramadan and all these thoughts I had about it. But I don't know if any of that really came across because I was a little bit distracted. I had my mystery assistant with me, and she did not want to be in the video, of course. She wants to keep her private life private. And so whenever I had something I wanted to say about Ramadan, then I would sort of separate from my mystery assistant, then I would talk, and then I would join her again, and we go off exploring, doing the Ramadan thing, and then something else occurs to me, and then I would talk again. So that was kind of distracting me a little bit as well. So I don't know how much what I said made sense. I haven't seen the video yet that I shot. But anyway, funny thing is that we got there to Kampong Baru, and then I got a little bit distracted as well because I didn't realize that the Ramadan Bazaar was separate from the food street of Kampong Baru. I knew that. I figured that out before because I could see it on Google Maps. Oh, there's the Ramadan Bazaar. There's a Google Maps pin there. but it was different from the food street. And I didn't really understand what was going on, but somehow I forgot about all that, and my mystery assistant hadn't figured this out either at the beginning. So we basically followed a bunch of people, followed my feet, and I ended up walking down the main food street of Kampong Baru, the place where everybody goes at night to get food. All the food vloggers go there to get nasi lemak. There is a street filled with restaurants and food stalls. So I'm walking along that food street talking about Ramadan, and the whole time I thought this was the Ramadan Bazaar. I was treating it like, oh, here I am, I'm in the Ramadan Bazaar. Which of course I wasn't. I was nowhere near the Ramadan Bazaar. So that was kind of funny. Walked through the whole street, talking about Ramadan, looking around, and then we got to the end of it, and then my mystery assistant said, you know, I don't think this is the bazaar. I think it's somewhere else. And we stopped, got out our phones, and we're looking at Google Maps, and it was like, oh yeah, it's over there. This isn't, we weren't even in the bazaar. And that made sense because it looked normal. There was nothing special going on. There weren't any crowds of people. And I was about to suggest to her, well, why don't we go somewhere else? Because this Ramadan Bazaar doesn't look very unusual. It doesn't look special. This doesn't feel right to me. Why don't we get back into the LRT and let's go somewhere else? I was about to suggest that. And then she figured out, oh, no, there is a Kampong Ramadan Bazaar, but it's not here, it's over there. And then we started walking in that direction, and then everything suddenly became clear. All these people were walking down this other street, and we followed this big crowd of people, and then we got to an intersection where there were yellow tents. And it was a long line of yellow tents stretching for what seemed like forever down the street. And it was jammed with people, just filled with people. And it was like, this is the Ramadan Bazaar. It was so embarrassing. I'm such a dummy. I can't even go to a Ramadan Bazaar properly. But of course, it wouldn't be a Planet Doug video if something like that didn't happen. Who else but me would go to a Ramadan Bazaar, but then end up going to the wrong place entirely? But anyway, we got ourselves figured out, and now I'm standing outside this Ramadan Bazaar, the real Ramadan Bazaar, and I'm thinking, how in the world am I going to film that? Because it was jammed with people. It was packed. There's nowhere to move. How can you even get food? And there's no way you can comfortably go in there and film yourself with a GoPro. Yeah, I was looking at that wondering, how in the world is this going to work? And it was hot, humid. The humidity in the air was overwhelming. It was an extremely humid day. I don't know why, but it was just off the charts. And it had been raining all day, and it was going to rain again, and it did rain again on us. So we just dove into the bazaar, and right at the very beginning, there was this stall there, and some people, they were watching me while I was doing my Planet Doug thing. I was talking into the GoPro, and these people were looking at me, and I thought they wanted to come talk to me at some point. And then when I turned off my GoPro, I stopped recording, and then they did speak to me, and they said, oh, welcome to the Ramadan Bazaar. And this woman told me that the one in Kampong Baru was the oldest one in all of KL, so that was good. It was special, and it may even be the biggest one or something. I don't remember if she said that or not, but it was definitely big. And they were there to sort of, they were working for a company that were selling products there, but then they were also acting as kind of a welcoming committee for foreigners or maybe other people coming to the bazaar. And they gave us a present, gave me a package. It was like a yellow something in a plastic bag, and said, oh, we have a Ramadan gift for you, and here you are, sir. And at the time, I thought it was a tote bag. And I was thinking, a tote bag is going to be really handy, because it was pretty clear that there's no way you can go down this bazaar, buy food, and eat it. Of course, the local people were not eating. It wasn't the time to break the fast yet. They were just buying food, and then they were going to take it home, wait for the official end of the day's fast, and then they were going to eat. But as a non-Muslim, I would be allowed to actually buy some of that food and eat it there. I wasn't entirely comfortable doing that. I didn't really want to, because when everyone around me is fasting as part of their religious observances. Oh, and by the way, fasting during Ramadan is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. So it is quite an important thing. It's not something to treat lightly or casually. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. So I don't want to be this big, goofy foreigner wandering around the bazaar. Everyone else is fasting and I'm stuffing food into my face. I didn't want to do that anyway. But it turns out, even if you wanted to, you couldn't have done that here because it was too crowded. There's too many people. So my mystery assistant and I, anyway, getting back to the tote bag, I thought, oh, this tote bag is going to be very handy because we can buy some food and I can keep putting the food in the tote bag as a way to carry it, because I didn't want to really put it in my knapsack because I had all my camera gear in there. The food is going to spill. It's going to destroy all my cameras. So I thought, oh, this tote bag is going to be really handy. But later on, when we decided to start buying some food, I opened the bag to take out the tote bag, but it turned out it was an apron. It was a bright yellow apron that you would wear while you're cooking or doing a barbecue, with the cord that goes around your neck and a strap, you tie a knot in the back and it has pockets and things like that. So it was an apron. It was not a tote bag. But yeah, that was kind of funny. And I have no use for an apron, of course. So my mystery assistant was glad to take the apron home. So I was trying to think, how in the world am I going to film this? I was hot, I was sweaty, I was flustered, I was confused. I didn't know what I was saying anymore. I didn't know what kind of food to buy because I didn't know what was traditional Ramadan food. All the food I saw around me was just normal food. There was martabak, roti john, shawarma, nasi lemak. All the food I would have every day that I'm here in KL was just there at the bazaar. So I wasn't sure what I was even supposed to buy. And I knew that I was there as a YouTuber shooting a vlog. And I thought, well, I should talk to people. Maybe I can talk to some people and, hey, Ramadan, what can you tell me? There should be some interaction with some people for the video, for the experience. And I thought, how can I even do that here? Because it was so crowded, you couldn't even move. But then I thought the very first thing I went up to was a martabak stall. These guys were there. They had a big tub of some kind of filling, and they were putting egg coating out on the griddle, and then they were taking some of this sauce or whatever it was, folding it up into a square, and they were making a kind of martabak. So I'm thinking, okay, Planet Doug, let's be a good YouTuber. Let's talk to these guys. Let's ask them about the food. Maybe I can break the ice and I can get comfortable with speaking in this environment and holding my camera. So I'm standing there at the martabak stall and I say to the guy something about, oh, martabak. What kind of martabak is this? What is the filling? And I said to the guy, is it kacang? Because it looked like a peanut sauce to me. It looked like peanuts, the coloring and the texture. And so I said to the guy, is this kacang? And I'm trying to be very upbeat and very YouTuber-y. There was 2 guys there making the martabak, and both of them just stared at me deadpan, just. And I tried again. Oh, so martabak, big smile, I'm being a YouTuber. Kacang, is that peanut? And they didn't react to me in any way. So then I just backed away from the place. I went, sorry, okay. It's like, what did I do? I already made my first Ramadan mistake. Why were they so angry with me? Am I not supposed to talk during Ramadan? I never saw this happen in any other Ramadan videos. So Planet Doug, I'm thinking, yeah, I must have done something wrong. But then some time went by, and I eventually figured out that these two guys, and not just these two guys, but the majority of the people making the food, they weren't Malaysian. These were all immigrant workers. And I kind of figured that out even when I went up to the Martabak place, because something deep in my brain, I looked at these guys and I thought, oh, you don't look like you're from Malaysia. And I don't know where they were from, but they could have been from Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, whatever country these workers come from. They were not from Malaysia. Clearly, they didn't know anything about anything. They didn't know about Ramadan. It's not part of their world. Or maybe they're from an Islamic country, so maybe they know about Ramadan. But anyway, they're not there to be part of the Ramadan experience for a dumb YouTuber, and I'm pretty sure they didn't speak any English. So I'm going up to these two guys, assuming they're Malaysian, assuming they spoke English, kind of assuming they wouldn't mind chatting with a foreign YouTuber a little bit. And it turns out it's because they didn't speak English. And that really threw me for a loop. After that, at that point, I didn't know what to do anymore. It's like, how in the world am I going to film this experience? And as I said, I couldn't move. And you got this crowd of people moving down this narrow food stall. And there were food stalls here, food stalls in the middle, and food stalls over here. So there were people moving in this direction, like a river of people flowing in this direction. And then on the other side, they were flowing in the other direction. So they were going in a clockwise circle. And there's no way, really, it didn't seem possible to go against the flow. And you're just being pushed along. So I'm going along with my mystery assistant, and before we know it, we've been pushed all the way to the end, and we pop out the other side. And we didn't buy anything. I bought a drink, I think. But I decided, okay, here's my strategy. I'm going to just get pushed along by the river of people, this torrent of people, and I'm just going to look at food, and then I'm going to decide what I want. Okay, I'm going to get this, and I'm going to get this, but I'm not going to get it now. I'm just going to go through, figure out what food I want to get, and then we'll go around in a circle and come back, and then I'll get the food. And I had already spoken to my mystery assistant about this. This is why I called her my mystery assistant. I asked her, would she mind from time to time holding the GoPro? And I thought she wouldn't mind doing that, and she agreed. She was happy to do it. So I gave her the GoPro, and then that would free up my hands. So I could just relax. I don't have to worry about the camera. She can film me from a distance, and I can go up to the various food stalls and have a conversation. Oh, can I get one of these? How much is it? And of course, I'm paying with my eWallet most of the time, which is, again, kind of a new thing. I think of Ramadan as being an old traditional celebration, and yet there you are buying all your food using an app and scanning their QR codes. And sometimes I've scanned their QR code, but it doesn't work with my eWallet. It was some of them work, some of them don't. I don't really understand the distinction. So I'm scanning, and then, oh, it's not working, and now I have to pay in cash, and it was all kind of confusing and difficult. And yeah, so I made my way through, and the food selections I made were typical Planet Doug selections in that they made no sense at all. What I wanted to buy was a complete meal. I saw places that had like a buffet. You could buy chicken and rice and vegetables, just get an ordinary meal all at once, and then that would be your meal for breaking the fast when you go home. But because I thought maybe I'd be eating some of this right there, I wanted simple food that like snacks, not meals, but a snack. So for some reason I ended up with a big piece of roasted chicken, because I love roasted chicken, and it was easy to get, and I thought it would be very tasty, and I was quite hungry. And then I got a roti john, which I've never had before, in fact. It's just a big a Subway sandwich, basically. I don't know why it's called roti john. I looked this up a while back, but I've forgotten all the history of it. I got a roti john, and then for some reason I got a shawarma, a wrap, which is essentially another sandwich. So I got a big piece of chicken, a big sandwich, and another big sandwich. And that was my Ramadan food. And I felt like, okay, I made a mistake here. There must have been something more special that I could have gotten, but I didn't know what. And I thought this food would be easy to eat because they're sandwiches. It's not going to be messy. And then my mystery assistant, she bought a couple of things, and she focused more on dessert things, sweet little snacks that were special. So it ended up being kind of a nice collection. And then it was getting quite late at this point, and it started to rain, and it was getting dark, and I thought, okay, I think it's dark enough now. It's okay now to eat the food. I think it's time to break the fast. And then my assistant and we found a chendol place, and they had tables and chairs, and it was like, yes, score, because I really needed to sit down. And I thought we could order a chendol. They had durian chendol on the sign, and I took a seat at the tables, and then my assistant went to get the chendol. She came back, and she made an executive decision and got mango chendol instead, which was delicious, was really good. And then we sat at this table eating the chendol, and then I thought, well, we're sitting here anyway. The GoPro is running. Why? I gave the GoPro to my mystery assistant again, and then I got out my bag of food. So I ate the roti john. I sampled some of it. It turned out they cut it up into pieces. So it wasn't just one big sandwich. They actually cut it up into sections, so I could pick out one section and eat it, talk about it. And then I went on to the shawarma. I ate that, I sampled that and talked about it. And I don't think I even opened out the chicken because it didn't seem that special. And I had some of the dessert snacks that my assistant had. And here I probably made a mistake based on everything I've been talking about. I made a big deal about the true meaning of Ramadan, about fasting and spiritual reflection and charity and community, all these things. And I've been talking about how I dislike this idea that you fast all day just so that you can gorge at night. I don't think that's what Ramadan is about. It's not about having delicious food. It's more about separating yourself from bodily needs and bodily desires so you can have a time of prayer and reflection. So anyway, I went into this Ramadan Bazaar with that state of mind. But the chaos of the place, the heat, the rain, the crowds, the pushing, the shoving, people looking angrily at me, nobody wanting to talk to me because of that, the craziness of it. I was so exhausted, I was so tired. And then I sort of forgot about all these ideas about Ramadan. So when we were sitting down sampling the food, I feel like I slipped back into YouTuber 5-snack challenge mode or night market mode. So when I was trying the food, I was like, oh, that is so good, it's so tasty. And I was talking about how good the food was. And that wasn't my mindset when I started. But then by the time I got the food, I forgot about Ramadan, to be honest. And I was just talking about the food like it was normal food, if you get my drift. But at least I wasn't like, eating and eating and eating and making a big deal out of having a huge feast, because I don't think that goes with the spirit of Ramadan. But I do feel like I lost control to an extent, and I was talking too much about how good the food tasted and focusing on that a bit too much when that isn't the spirit of Ramadan. But anyway, yeah, what a night that was. Wow. The crowds. And I have to say that at the end of it, I was thinking about this difference. I run into this all the time, that whenever I do something like this overseas, there is enjoyment in the adventure of it, enjoyment in having a new experience, but it really wasn't enjoyable, right? Where if you break down the experience itself, it was profoundly uncomfortable. Hot, crowded, chaotic, noisy, uncomfortable. The whole experience from beginning to end was extremely tiring and uncomfortable and, to be honest, unpleasant. It was actually an unpleasant experience because it was so crowded and it was so overwhelming and uncomfortable even eating the food, because we're on this little table with rickety chairs and I'm unwrapping this food and there was a fan blowing on the table, and every time I took something out of a plastic bag, the fan would blow the plastic bag away and I got to go grab it, and everything was just very, very uncomfortable and unpleasant. So the enjoyment is not enjoyment because it's so pleasurable and comfortable. The enjoyment comes from it being a new experience, being an adventure, a cross-cultural adventure, but physically it was not enjoyable at all. So that I find that kind of funny, where people talk about, oh, I'm going to go to the Ramadan Bazaar, it's going to be so wonderful, we're going to have all this good food. And yet the reality for me on Planet Doug was very much the opposite, because even the food wasn't that good, to be honest. In the video, I said it was really good because I grabbed the first piece of the roti john and I ate it, and it was a burst of flavor, and I was really hungry, and my reaction was, oh, this is so good. But it was really just a bunch of meat with, I think, canned spaghetti sauce. It had a really strong spaghetti sauce flavor. Maybe that's what a roti john is supposed to be. But after I ate one piece and another piece, and I think I ate the entire roti john before we left from that Chendol restaurant, by the time I got to the end, I almost felt a little bit ill, because the flavor of this spaghetti sauce and all that meat was way too much. It was over the top. To be honest, it wasn't very good. I thought it was good at the beginning, but by the time I got to the end, it was like, oh, this is too much. It was just too much spaghetti sauce, too much meat. It really wasn't good at all. And then the shawarma, the wrap, kind of had the same reaction. I took a bite out of it, and then I don't think I finished that. I just took a bite and I put it away. But there was nothing special about that either. And there was nothing special about the chicken. I had it later when I came back to my room here later that night. I ate the whole chicken and I ate the entire shawarma. But again, there was nothing special about that either. So in terms of the comfort level of the Ramadan Bazaar, it was profoundly uncomfortable, unpleasant, and the food was not that great. It was just ordinary food. In fact, it seemed to be worse than the food I have day to day. So that was Planet Doug's experience of a Ramadan Bazaar. Very glad I went. I had a good time, good company, but I had a good time from the point of view of having a new experience. But it wasn't a comfortable experience at all. It really wasn't. So I could go back to a Ramadan Bazaar, but now I know a lot more about what they're all about, how you can enjoy them and experience them. But my first time doing it now, yeah, it was pretty difficult experience overall. And I mentioned that I was going to talk about a YouTube video about Ramadan Bazaar, and maybe I'll finish up with that here. Do I still have the video open? I think it's on my other phone. Yeah, here it is. Actually, someone sent me a link to this video and asked me, what do you think of this? And I think they're asking me, what do I think of this? Because they're assuming I might have a little bit of an opinion about it, negative or positive, probably negative. And I still haven't made up my mind. So the video is called, I Bought a Whole Ramadan Bazaar in Malaysia. And it's from a channel and a YouTuber, a guy named Brent Timm. I think I've seen his videos before. He's a popular YouTuber. In his video, he says his channel just got 100,000 subscribers. So he's celebrating, and he's in Penang. He's not in Kuala Lumpur. He was in Penang. And his idea was to go to a Ramadan Bazaar with 1,000 ringgit. So it's kind of like a challenge. He was going to spend 1,000 ringgit, buy as much food as he can for 1,000 ringgit, and then give it away. So he's going to go there, buy food, and then give it to the other people that are at the bazaar. Or as it turned out, he would just go up to people who are ordering some food, and then he would offer to pay for them. And as he says at the beginning of the video, he's doing this because of the spirit of Islam, as I talked about in Ramadan, has this component of charity, of giving to the less fortunate, and the sense of community. And he does say that most of his subscribers came from Pakistan and Bangladesh, and he was been given so much from the people of these Islamic countries that he wants to give back now. And so his idea was to spend 1,000 ringgit and then give food to all the people there. And of course, if you read the comments, there are over 600 comments, and all of the comments that I've seen have been praising what he's doing, that he's doing something very, very good and respectful, and it's a good thing to do. But then, of course, I saw this video, the thumbnail popped up in my feed, and then I clicked on it and watched a few seconds of it, and then I turned it off because I had a little bit of a negative reaction to it, which connects to two things, I guess. Again, this whole idea of Ramadan being about spiritual reflection. It's not about the food. The point is not eating the food. The fasting is the point, so that you separate yourself from the food. But again, this video is focusing on the food itself. But he is approaching it from the sense of charity. But then I felt a little bit weird about that as well, because he was just going up to everybody at the bazaar, just anybody who was there, approaching total strangers, putting them on video without asking for permission, without clearing the way first, just going up to them with a roti john, for example, and said, "Here, I want to give you a roti john." And in a couple of the faces of the women that he went up to, they kind of looked at him like they were confused. And I don't know, the whole thing felt a little bit weird to me, because the people at the bazaar, they weren't poor. These are normal Malaysian people. They went to the bazaar with money to buy food to take home to their families. They're just there doing the normal Ramadan celebration. So I understand the idea of giving as part of Ramadan, but the idea in my head is you give to the less fortunate, you give to the needy, and none of these people were particularly less fortunate or needy. They're just normal people. So I'm not quite sure how I feel about that, and I'm not sure how I feel about the challenge side of it. Basically, this guy, a little bit like he's a foreigner, and he's hijacking Ramadan and turning it into a YouTube stunt. And I'm wondering whether it's really appropriate for someone who's not Muslim, who's not from Malaysia, to sort of insert himself into the Ramadan celebrations to that extent. And I fully admit I could be overthinking this dramatically. And I'm certainly on the wrong side. If you look at all the comments, most of them from Malaysians, and they all think this was an extremely wonderful thing for him to do. So maybe my instinctive dislike of it is not accurate. Maybe I'm just looking at it from a curmudgeonly point of view. I'm just being a curmudgeonly old guy or something. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I haven't, as I said, I haven't watched the whole video, so I can't really speak to the whole thing. I've only watched like 5 minutes of it so far. And I will watch the rest of it. So anyway, that was just a thought I had. It made me think of a lot of these videos that I see in the United States. YouTubers make these videos where I think it's been inspired by Mr. Beast, because Mr. Beast will give away money, and he knows that the more money he gives away, the more popular his video is, and he makes all that money back, right? So it's not really charity, because it's a stunt that he gets a lot of views on the video and he makes a lot of money, and then the next month he has more money that he can just give away and make another stunt video. So a lot of people are imitating Mr. Beast in small ways. So you get people who just walk up to a house, they just pick a random house they have money, and they knock on the door, and whoever opens the door, they say to them, "Hey, I want to pay for your rent this month. How much is your rent?" And the person says, "Well, I pay $1,500 a month for this apartment." And the guy just peels off $1,500 and gives it to him and says, "I want to pay for your rent." And then that's the video. So he gives away thousands of dollars to people, or hundreds of dollars, whatever it is. And the idea is it's an act of charity, helping people. But of course, the true point of the video is to make something that a lot of people want to watch, and he'll make all that money back and more through YouTube earnings. And you see people going up to homeless people, giving them free bicycles or free anything, and they make videos about it. And it's in this gray area of, yes, they're doing something nice as charity, but at the same time, they're doing it for selfish reasons, because they know it's basically a YouTube gimmick that people are going to watch, and then they get hundreds of thousands of views and they make all the money back. So it's a bit of a weird thing, isn't it? And going to a Ramadan Bazaar to spend 1,000 ringgit and then just giving the food to people that are there just has, I suppose, a little bit of a distasteful feeling to me. But that could be because I'm an old curmudgeon, perhaps. And yeah, who knows? You can tell me if I'm making any sense at all. I do have one other big Planet Doug story to tell, but I'll save it for another video. And I thought I would wind this behind the scenes video up with Pulp Culture Roundup. I've watched a couple of interesting things lately. In my last video, I talked about watching the movie Air, about Michael Jordan and Nike and the Air Jordan shoe. And the star was Matt Damon, along with Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck was the director. And that sort of sent me down a Matt Damon rabbit hole. And I uncovered a movie from him that I'd never seen that people spoke highly of. So I thought I should watch that. And it's a movie called Stillwater. And I enjoyed it quite a bit. Matt Damon is good. He's always compelling. And he played very much against type. What I mean is he normally plays a good guy, clean cut, likable, nice. You think of The Martian, is that his movie, when he's stranded on Mars? Very positive, optimistic guy. He plays likable characters. And in Stillwater, he went a little bit in the other direction. He essentially plays a stereotype of an American redneck. and yet this redneck has a lot of these sort of redneck features about him and characteristics and personality, but he deep down, of course, he is a good guy. There's a heart of gold way down there, but a very gruff exterior. And he's had some problems in his life that has led him to do some bad things. So he's not a good guy. But the movie takes place in Europe, in France, in Marseille, actually. And I find that very interesting. Lately, I really enjoy movies that are set in Europe because it's a nice contrast with only American English all the time. And now you're in Europe where more of the world is apparent there, more nationalities, more languages, a different lifestyle. It's kind of nice to see something different from a typical American Hollywood movie, right? So I enjoyed the fact that it's in Marseille, it's in a different world, and it involves a lot of immigrants, because Europe does have a lot of immigrants from all over Africa, Middle East, countries all over the place. And there is some tension amongst them and then the French people themselves. And so that is involved in this story a little bit. And the basic plot is that his estranged daughter got in trouble while in Marseille. She was living in Marseille and she was put in prison. So Matt Damon, her father, estranged from his daughter, but he went there to try and help her out. And then he got involved in all kinds of street level investigations and sleuthing and physical world that he lived in. And he basically stayed in Marseille, got a job as a construction worker, trying to help his daughter and trying to get her out of prison. And then he ended up connecting with some local people and basically redeeming himself. It's a redemption story where Matt Damon failed, or his character failed as a father and as a husband, but now in the act of trying to rescue his daughter and get her out of prison, he redeems himself and enjoys the life he should have had as a father. He got a second chance at being a father, a second chance at being a husband, a second chance at having a family through the act of trying to help his original daughter. Very powerful story, very emotional story, very exciting story, and quite an interesting one. So yeah, I don't think it's very well known. I don't think it was a blockbuster event or anything like that. The movie is called Stillwater, as I said, and it's worth a look, I think. It's worth watching. Another movie that I watched that I think pretty highly of is called The Holdovers. And I had this movie going around in my mind because at the end of 2023 or the beginning of 2024, a lot of the online YouTube movie critics, they released their lists of the top 10 movies of 2023. I watched a whole bunch of these videos, and quite a few of them had the movie The Holdovers on their list of the top 10 movies of 2023. So I made a mental note about that, and I eventually got around to watching it. It stars Paul Giamatti, who I think is a really interesting actor. I like him a lot. And yeah, very good movie. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It gives a glimpse into a bit of a world, an unfamiliar world of a private school, where a private boys' school, and the students there, of course, because it's a private school, a very famous traditional school, they tend to come from wealthy families. And Paul Giamatti is a professor, a teacher at this private school. And the plot and the name of the movie, The Holdover, centers on Christmas vacation, where all of these rich students go off with their families and go off on exotic holidays to the Caribbean, and they go skiing in the Alps, and they're all rich and they all have these amazing vacations with their family. But some of the students have nowhere to go. Their family has rejected them, or they're foreign students living here, where they're from Hong Kong or wherever they're from, and they can't go home for the holidays. So there's always a group of students who have to stay at the school during Christmas holidays, and then you need one teacher to stay to supervise them, and then you need one person in the kitchen to prepare food for them, and one janitor to keep everything running, and a maintenance man. So all of these people are called the holdovers. They are held over during the Christmas holidays because they have nowhere to go. And then through the story of the movie, we learn about the backstory of Paul Giamatti's character and the backstory of one of the students in particular. We learn about them early in the movie, and then over time, the two of them get to know each other. They bond to an extent, and they each have burdens that they're carrying from their past, huge burdens and chips on their shoulders about things that happened to them in the past. And during this Christmas holiday break, they have adventures, and at the end of it, they are both also kind of redeemed. They are sort of at odds. The two of them are at loggerheads. They fight, and then through their fight with each other, they actually learn to like each other and respect each other to an extent, learn about each other, and through doing so, they both come to terms with their own past, with their own burdens that they're carrying, and they manage to get beyond them, and their lives, both of their lives, change for the better. So yeah, very interesting movie, very dramatic, very emotional, very powerful, great characters, great acting. Yeah, Paul Giamatti and the Holdovers. Planet Doug approved. And finally, for today's behind the scenes video, I started watching, at long last, the 3-Body Problem. And I knew nothing about this show. I knew zero, nothing at all, except that everybody was talking about it. I saw headlines all over the place, articles being written about it, YouTube videos being made about it. Everybody's talking about the 3-Body Problem. So it seemed to be good. People liked it. It seemed to have real content that people wanted to talk about, but there also seemed to be some kind of a controversy about it. I did get the impression that had something to do with China, and maybe because of its content from China, how it portrayed things, maybe that's where the controversy. But anyway, everybody's talking about it. 3-Body Problem, 3-Body Problem. So I decided to start watching it. And I won't give away anything about it at all, but I will say that it falls into this modern trend of movies and TV shows centering on quantum mechanics. So the whole idea of quantum mechanics and physics, particles, and this idea that when you mess around with quantum mechanics, weird things happen. So I've seen so many shows lately where people go up into space and they're doing experiments, quantum mechanic experiments. Something goes wrong and then it splits into 2 realities, and people end up in a different reality from their original reality, start merging. All these strange theories to do with string theory, quantum mechanics, things like that. And the 3-Body Problem seems to be sort of heading into that direction. Very, a lot of crazy things happening. Very interesting show, great characters, and I'm enjoying it very much. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say about it. I watched a couple of episodes, and I'm deeply invested in the story. I want to see where it's going, find out what is really happening, because it leaves you guessing. There's stuff going on, and you think you know what it is. Some people think they know, but other people think something else is happening. And so I'm hoping that it doesn't disappoint. Like, I don't want it to be a TV show like Lost, where so many crazy things happen, and then by the end of the show, it's like none of it meant anything. It was all just made up at random and had no meaning at all. I'm hoping, because this comes from a book, the ideas are more thought out, and when you get to the end of the show, and therefore the end of the book story, there's going to be an answer, that this is what's really happening, and this is what happened, and they're going to explain everything. I'm hoping, because I do not want to be left with, none of it meant anything, and we're not going to tell you what it was about. We shall see. So yeah, that is the 3-body problem. Also, so far, Planet Doug approved. So that is it for this morning. Time to move on with the rest of my day. I didn't think I would talk as much as I did. I wasn't intending to, but yeah, so I've kind of wore out my throat a little bit. So that's it. I'm going to shut down, wind up, and I'll see you in the next video.